I posted this picture of the likeness of Jesus at the very onset of this video, and the first thing that came to mind was, who is he looking at? The answer to that question is, he's looking at you, and he's looking at me. We are the object of his greatest affection. The text that I want to look at today is found in Hebrews, the 12th chapter, verse 2. Fixing your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Look at how the author of Hebrews actually describes Jesus as the perfecter, the author and perfecter of faith. It's a strange combination of words. However, what does it actually mean? The word author actually means the originator, the one who inspires or has actually created the whole concept of faith. And then it goes on to say he's the perfecter of faith. In order to perfect something, you must use it a lot and learn all of its intricacies. And perfection is actually paying attention to the small details of something. So, how did Jesus actually accomplish that? It was, in essence, his life. He set aside his divine nature and lived completely as a human being on the earth. He interacted with his Father with the same level of advantage that you and I have at our disposal to interact with God himself. It's the same relationship that you and I can have with him through prayer, through meditation, through interaction, and just speaking to God as a father, as a friend, as a source of comfort, strength, and discernment throughout your entire life. Now, here's where it really gets interesting. Look at the next phrase, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. It's very strange to see the word joy associated or close to the word cross in a sentence. To prove the point, I'm going to invite Jordan Peterson to describe the actual aspect of Jesus' life, the most tragic of all stories, as he describes what Jesus actually went through as he approached the cross.
You cannot write a more tragic story. It's impossible, technically. Why? Well, because it's a story of the aggregation of everything that people are afraid of. So there was no death more painful than crucifixion. That's why the Romans invented it. It was to punish political miscreants. It was the slow, agonizing death by suffocation, essentially, and dehydration and exposure. It's extraordinarily painful. Plus, you know it's coming. That's part of the story. Plus, your best friend betrayed you into it. Plus, your people turned against you. Plus, they're led by a tyrant who doubts truth. Plus, you're a victim of the Roman Empire. Plus, you're completely innocent. Plus, everybody knows it. Plus, they choose a criminal to be released from this experience instead of you, even though they know he's a criminal and they know you're innocent. And you're young, and you've done no wrong, and all you've done is help people.
I submit to you that the cross is the point of emphasis in Jesus' life, where faith was perfected. The scripture defines faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. How does that apply to Jesus on the cross? He became sin who knew no sin. He was the embodiment of the very thing that was so repugnant to God. And it was that caused him to believe that God would accept his life as a perfect sacrifice for the redemption of all mankind. Jesus endured the cross. Now look at the next phrase, despising the shame. Look at the significance of the words enduring the cross, despising the shame. What does that really mean? He was a political criminal. Jesus was set with the lowest of humanity, the thieves, the filthy beggars, the con men of his day. He was labeled a bastard, an out-of-wedlock child by the priests. Jesus was beaten to a pulp. No one received a beating like Jesus had received because Satan was in charge of that beating. If a loincloth was not placed upon the crucifixes and the scenes that you see depicting Jesus on the cross, do you honestly think that you could bear to watch that or see him in that condition? The Romans were using crucifixion as a deterrent to go against any of the laws of the land. Adam and Eve's nakedness and shame associated with the fall in the garden was now on full display as Jesus hung on the cross to forgive all the way back to that point in history the sins of mankind. Jesus' last words were, "It is finished." Then he prayed to the Father, "Abba, into your hands I do commit my spirit." Humanity now had a bruised and beaten corpse on their hands. Now let's read the conclusion of this verse. "And has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." Now look at what the author of the perfection of faith accomplished and what it is that he was rewarded with. Firstly, the resurrection. Jesus was the perfect sacrifice that was acceptable to a righteous and holy God. Secondly, he was placed in the highest position of the entire universe next to his Father in heaven. He is ever there to represent you and me, mankind, before the throne. Jesus Christ died the death of the damned, and yet he came and exercised the faith in his Father's strength to get him through this ordeal and this commission. Despite getting the worst beating and bruising known to humanity, his face still had a sense of peace upon it in his death, as evidenced by this. Listen carefully concerning the Shroud of Turin.
Thinking back to 1978 and his time in the room with the shroud, Barry Schwartz remembers one moment in particular.
Especially my friend Don Lynn from JPL. I remember asking him, I think a day into it or so in the evening, it was quiet. So I said, "So what are you feeling, Don?" And he said, "What moved me is the tortured body and the peacefulness of his face." Because here's a man who was, beaten and speared and scourged and stabbed and all these terrible things done to him. And yet you don't see a grimace on his face of pain or misery. It's sort of a peaceful expression. And Don Lynn, may he rest in peace, said that was what moved him the most.
The peace on Jesus' face was God's reward to show that he was acceptable. Despite the torture and the trauma, he was given the peace that surpasses all understanding. Now listen to the truth that comes out of the lips of an individual who is born with no arms or legs.
He loves you. He loves you just the way that you are. He's not gonna think of you more or more precious if you do good and give, or if you pray to him longer, or if you have the gift that everybody else has. He's certainly gonna hear me more. He's certainly gonna love me more. No, I'm sorry, he doesn't. Because he loves us all the same. How can a father love a child differently than another child?
Jesus had no servants, yet they called him master. He had no degree, yet they called him teacher. He had no medicines, yet they called him healer. He had no army, yet kings feared him. He won no military battles, yet he conquered the world. He did not live in a castle, yet they called him Lord. He ruled no nations, yet they called him king. He committed no crime, yet they crucified him. He was buried in a tomb, yet he lives today. His kingdom is not of this world, yet it lies within the hearts of those who believe. He spoke of love and forgiveness, and his words have transformed millions. He offers no material wealth, yet we consider him the treasure of our lives. He promises no earthly power, yet in his name the powerless have found strength. Though he left no written words, his legacy endures through the lives he has touched.
I hope this video has provided enough evidence for you to realize the reality of Jesus Christ being alive and well and looking solely for your own benefit to bring you into his loving arms throughout all of eternity. For the assurance of salvation, repeat Romans 10, verse 9 with me now. I say with my mouth that Jesus is Lord, and believe in my heart that God raised him from the dead. And according to Romans 10, verse 9, I am saved. Remember, twice a month, on the 15th and 30th of every month, a new video comes out on this channel revealing the love of God through his Son, Jesus Christ, to you personally and to the rest of the world. Don't be concerned about the outcome of elections, for man is not the source of your redemption. The fight between good and evil is in God's hands, and it has already been won. We are victorious. Kindly subscribe, comment, like, and share this with everyone. God bless you.